tell you one thing, that
Hey,
dude is sick.
when my girls start to trip and hate before I skate, I call Sirius XM 98. Yeah, Thursdays, the Foxxhole 7 to 9 to talk to ZoWilliams before I lose my mind. Yo, I need advice on my relationship, cause I'm about to start breaking. I can't take it no more. I got to holler at Zo, the relationship pro. Before I pack up and go, I got my foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason. I got one foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zometheus Rising, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason, has re-entered the Foxxhole for yet another riveting conversation. We're trying to change the world today, and tonight's topic is one of those world-changing kind of discussions that we need to have. And I know a lot of people don't like it when we get deep. But I'm asking you, pull your trucks over, pull your cell phones out. Call the number, 855-369-9898. That's 855-FOX-9898 to participate in this most urgent conversation. Tonight's topic, without further ado, the AIDS Awareness Show. We're talking about safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and the cure. Oh, God, it's going to be crazy tonight. I got great guests. I got great energy. I got great people in the building. I'm going to take a quick break. But when I return, we will be talking about, once again, the AIDS Awareness Show. We're going to talk about safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, the C word, and the cure. Somebody talk to me right now. 855-369-9898. ZoWilliams, voice of reason, Foxxhole Radio. We'll be back in 2.2. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice of reason, Zometheus Rising, is back in the building. You're listening to the Foxxhole, which is Sirius XM 98 on your dial. Every Thursday night, we're here doing cutting-edge topics because we want to make our relationships better. We want to give you tools to make your life better, your relationships better, and the only way to do that is to have difficult conversations. And tonight's topic is not an easy one, but we're going to face it together. The AIDS Awareness Show. Everybody know June 5th was the 30th anniversary of what we now know to be AIDS. And that was the 30th anniversary. And this show is dedicated to that anniversary. We want to talk about it. We want to bring awareness. The AIDS Awareness Show. We're going to talk about safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and the cure. Get to your phone lines right now at 855-369-9898. And also go to my website, www.ZoWilliams.com. That's ZoWilliams.com. Or you can email me at zo@SiriusXM.com. We want all of your information. Follow me on Twitter. If you have questions for me tonight and you're near your computer and you're on Twitter, tweet the questions. We will read them out. We will ask our crack panel, to answer some of these difficult questions, as well as our callers. If you've lost somebody to AIDS or HIV, or if you're dealing with it, if you're dealing with the perception, if you've recently tested positive and you're afraid to come out because you're afraid to be judged or looked at, in a funny kind of way or discriminated against, call me right now, 855-369-9898. Before I introduce my guest, in-studio guest, and before I read my questions, let me remind you, the Foxxhole, all of us, we're heading to Atlantic City. Join us on the 4th of July weekend for the Foxxhole Radio Celebrity Weekend Jam, hosted by none other than the man, Jamie Foxx. The Foxxhole crew is taking over Caesars Hotel and Casino all weekend long. You need to get to Ticketmaster and get your tickets right now. And before I even make it to Atlantic City, you need to come to Chicago and check me out at the Little Black Pearl Workshop at 1060 East 47th Street. I know you from Chicago, right? Illinois, June 25th from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. This is the first relationship roundtable I'm doing this year, and I'm doing it in Chicago. We're talking about communication. We're talking about cheating. We're talking about everything that pisses you off about your relationship. Somebody call me, 855-369-9898. Now, back to the topic at hand. This is the AIDS awareness show, man. And there's a lot of questions out there, and a lot of people want to know, what is the difference between HIV and AIDS? A lot of people don't know the difference, right? You got some people out there who don't think that AIDS is a product of HIV. They don't think HIV leads to AIDS. I mean, it's a big conspiracy going on, you know? And the best way to kill a conspiracy is with information. Another question, is abstinence the real cure for HIV and AIDS? Catholic Church seems to think so. They came out and was talking about the condoms, and, you know, the condoms aren't good. Don't use them. And a lot of people thought that was irresponsible. Now, they have come out since then, after being crushed by the media, to say, well, in some instances, condoms are okay. But is abstinence the real key to preventing HIV and AIDS? What are the myths about the origin of the AIDS virus? When it first came out, they were talking about a little green monkey in Africa. We want to know, where did the green monkey go? Is the green monkey still running around biting people? We don't know. Somebody call us, 855-369-9898. Was AIDS man-made? Why does it disproportionately affect the hood and people of the melaninated nature? Why is only 1% of the Caucasian population immune? Did you guys hear about that in the news? The dude that's supposed to be the only one that's classified as cured, Caucasian dude. And then they slipped up and said 1% of the Caucasian population is immune? Sounds like genetic engineering to me. If you agree, call me. 855-369-9898. I don't know. Somebody give me the answers. I got people here with answers, but I want to talk about conspiracies too. Let's go. The AIDS awareness show, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm not going to ask all my questions. What I'm going to do now is introduce some very esteemed guests in the building right now. And I think it's very important that we get to know these people and we connect with them, because there are several organizations that you guys represent. So let me just do this. My first guest. Now, this brother, his bio is about 37 pages long, but he's very significant, a very significant personality on the AIDS awareness scene. He's an activist. So as a person who has been living with AIDS, HIV, for nearly 30 years now, Brother Phill Wilson, the president and founder of the Black AIDS Institute, is one of the most go-to authorities on the subject of HIV and AIDS. You will often see Phill on CNN or at the White House. Just released AIDS, 30 Years is Enough. This report by the Black AIDS Institute marks the 30th anniversary of the first official report on the emergence of HIV and AIDS epidemic. Over 3 decades, AIDS has radically altered our world, reshaping entire regions of the world, changing people's relationships with their own sexuality, dramatically accelerating social and cultural change, and producing some of the most important scientific advances in the last century. Phill can talk about this. Phill Wilson, welcome to the Voice of Reason. I appreciate you taking out the time to share your vast and immense knowledge on the subject. Say hi to the millions.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for your hospitality. This is an important subject, and I'm glad that you're taking it on.
Man, let's get active. Let's get active. Now, next up, we've got more people in the building that can speak ad nauseum to the issue. First, let me introduce from St. John's Well Child and Family Center here in Los Angeles. That's 5701 South Hoover Street in L.A., the hood. But the hood is up to some good with these folks that are here today. First, let me introduce the Support Services Administrator. Her name is Jessie Hernandez. She's in the building. She's going to share her vast knowledge on STD prevention. We're going to talk about the reproductive situation, that we got to educate these kids on what they're doing with their body parts so that they won't wake up one morning sick, right? That's what we're going to do. And she brought along a friend. His name is William Alamo. He is a coordinator, something called the Man Up Coordinator. Now, this is deep, because, you know, men, we don't like to talk about nothing. We could get sick and just be walking around sick and just ignoring stuff. Maybe that's the law of attraction, or maybe that's just a recipe for death. But William Alamo from the same organization, St. John's Well Child and Family Center, will be here to talk about that as well. Let me just welcome you guys into the Voice of Reason. Welcome for coming. Thank you, Jesse and William. Talk to us.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate that you have this topic going on, because in South LA we faced a lot of disparities. Our people in South LA have trouble just getting health care, period. And when we go into the high schools, we try to teach our teens about going in and getting tested. So we try to start on the lower levels, not that the lower STDs are not a problem, but if we can get them there, we gradually bring them up into getting them tested for HIV.
Wow.
We do rapid testing. I'm over everything that's reproductive care for St. John's, and I also oversee the infertility program, because chlamydia is a big problem in South LA. What SPA 6 is the South LA area, and it has the highest rate of chlamydia than we have in the nation, just in that area of SPA 6.
And as we were talking before we came on the air, you said chlamydia is like the gateway to higher infections or STDs, correct?
Correct. An untreated chlamydia can have you, if we can say, more susceptible to contracting HIV. So, and it also can go, chlamydia can also go into other ranges, but that's one of our biggest concerns. It's the teens that don't treat a chlamydia, something as easy as just treating it with coming into the clinic, getting the 1 gram of Zithromax right on site.
Wow.
So if we can't get them to come in and do that and get tested, then we have a higher problem.
William?
Yes, thank you for having us tonight. As Jessie said, she's actually overseeing our project, and I'm the one that's in the field, actually experiencing, working directly with the students, with the adolescents of our community. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of things that are going on in the field. The males are not coming in. They just drop off their girlfriends and head out to wherever they have to do, and that's what we want to do. We want to encourage males tonight to go out there and get tested, be responsible, get involved in the family planning process, and help the female. The females are the ones that are being affected dramatically by this pandemic, and we really want to make sure that the males are inspired tonight to go out there, talk to their partners, share their what they feel, and be able to go out there and get tested. That's what we want to encourage that tonight.
Got it. Phill Wilson, what is the Greater Than AIDS campaign?
Well, the Greater Than AIDS campaign is a campaign that is sponsored by the Black AIDS Institute and the Kaiser Family Foundation to basically mobilize black communities. It is basically based on the concept that black folks are among the most resilient folks on the planet. You know, we survived the Middle Passage, we survived slavery, we survived Reconstruction, we survived Jim Crow, and we can survive HIV as well, that we're greater than AIDS. Now, if we act. No, the challenge is that for too long, with regard to this epidemic, we have not been acting. And as a result, earlier in the intro of the show, you said, why are black folks disproportionately impacted? Well, you know, it's not rocket science. There are a number of reasons why we are currently disproportionately impacted. Initially, we were slow to respond to the epidemic. HIV is a disease of networks. Now, and so it's like having, an infection enter your community and you don't do anything. What will happen? It's going to spread. Exactly.
Right.
So we were slow to respond to the epidemic in the beginning. The epidemic was originally mischaracterized as a white gay disease because those are the folks we initially saw with HIV. It was never really a white gay disease. We were disproportionately impacted from the very, very beginning, but we didn't respond quickly. The second reason is that are the issues around lack of access to health care in general. Too many of us get our primary health care in emergency rooms. We are slow to seek treatment, often because we don't have health care, particularly now when so many Americans, their health care is connected to having a job, and when you have high unemployment and black folks are disproportionately impacted by unemployment, we don't have access to health care. Now, the final reason is, quite frankly, low HIV literacy in our communities. Everybody knows that there's this thing, AIDS, out there, but do we really understand how it works? Too many of us still believe that you can get it through sharing utensils or from toilet seats or mosquitoes or what have you. The truth of the matter is that you get HIV primarily in this country from one way, and that's having sex. You know, and so the good news is that we can create an environment that we can end the AIDS epidemic in our communities if we act. So that's the question. What can we do to end the AIDS epidemic in our communities?
Wow. 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. You're listening to the AIDS Awareness Show, Voice of Reason, ZoWilliams, Sirius XM 98. This is the Foxxhole, and this is a community action show. So we need you to go out there and do what you're supposed to do. Like William Alamo said, you gotta be responsible, men and women. And we've had these debates on this show many, many times. Who's responsible for making the other partner wear a condom? Is the man more responsible, or is the female more responsible? And hundreds of people called in arguing either side. I've always said you're both equally responsible because it's your life you're taking into your hands. How can you be convinced to put your life on the line? That's all I'm saying.
And so that's the point. That, I mean, quite frankly, I think that's a silly debate.
Right.
You know, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own lives. And you cannot give away, you cannot abdicate that responsibility. No, so every woman that is listening to this show today, absent an environment of rape, you are responsible for two things. You are responsible for knowing the HIV status of your partner. You're responsible for protecting yourself. Every man that's listening to this radio show today is responsible for two things. Now, you're responsible for knowing your HIV status, and you're responsible for protecting yourself. If we all do that, now, the interesting thing about this is that AIDS will go away. You know, we live in 2011 in an environment where a few things are in place that we could end the AIDS epidemic. You talk about a cure. We don't have a cure, but we have a roadmap to end the AIDS epidemic. We have the ability to diagnose the disease. You can take an HIV test today and get the results back in less than an hour. Everybody that's listening to this radio show could know their HIV status in less than an hour. The HIV tests are often free. They're painless, no more needles. They're easy, no more blood. They're fast. So it's free, it's easy, it's painless, it's fast, and you get information that might save your life. What's not to love about that?
Right. And Phil, let me ask you this really quickly. I want you to talk about how we do the work to shift the paradigm from the blame game, the blame and shame game, to the accountability and responsibility game. You talked about that, and I want you to go into that.
Absolutely. For far too long in the nearly 30 years of this epidemic, the 30 years of this epidemic, it has been a game around blame and shame. Whose fault is it? Who can I blame for this? How can we shame some folks? How can we extend discrimination and stigma? That gets us nowhere. Now, the truth of the matter is we should move from blame and shame to accountability and responsibility. Each and every one of us, our account can be held accountable for our action. We can create an environment that we're responsible for ourselves and for our communities. You asked earlier about the Greater Than AIDS campaign. That's what it's all about. It's about accountability and responsibility in black communities. Nobody can save us from us but us.
You know what? One of the biggest myths that are out there, and I want to ask this to the entire panel, Jesse, William, as well as you, Phil. Let's just say it. AIDS is no longer a white gay man's disease. So let's just say what it is. It's a human epidemic. And I think people need to understand that in the clearest way. So in 10 seconds apiece, tell me what you think it is, and tell me the best way to articulate this to the people that are listening right now. How do we get that message across that it is not just somebody up in San Francisco that got AIDS? How can we say it's in your neighborhood? It might even be in your family. It might be in your neighbor, wherever. Talk to me, William.
So Phil mentioned that the most common way to contract it is through sexual activity. If you're sexually active, you are at risk. You are at risk of contracting HIV. That's what a lot of people, especially the students that I work with, the adolescents, do not understand that. They feel that it's never going to happen to them, that they're invincible, that they can never be exposed to it because what? Because they're in a relationship, that they can't get it from their partner because they're in a relationship.
Wow.
So even if you're with your partner, you can also get it. If you're monogamous, it's always important to get tested every 3 months. It's free, it's simple. At the clinic, we recently incorporated the rapid test, which only takes 15 minutes to get the results.
Wow, Jesse.
AIDS is anybody sitting in this room. AIDS can come back and haunt you for something you did 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Wow.
AIDS could be me. AIDS could be your mother, your father. That's the face of AIDS.
Phill,
HIV.
talk to me,
Well,
Phill.
it's a human disease. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus.
Not gay.
That's
right.
It's HIV. It's not GIV. It's not BIV.
Right.
It's HIV, Human Immunodeficiency Virus. So if you are human, if you are sexually active, it is about you. There are 1.1 million Americans living with HIV today.
Wow.
20% of them do not know that they're infected.
Wow.
Now, that's the engine that's driving the epidemic in our communities. You cannot tell by looking at someone whether or not they have HIV. You cannot tell by the way they look, by the way they walk, by the way that they talk. Now, I have been living with HIV now for 30 years. I've been living with full-blown AIDS for 20 years. Ask me how I know. I have been on my deathbed twice already. Now, and so you cannot tell that I have HIV just by looking at me. And so you can't tell if anyone has it. And that's why everybody has to protect themselves. And that's why as a community, we need to create an environment, a culture where accountability and responsibility are the calls of the day. It is my responsibility as a person living with HIV to make sure that I don't transmit the virus to any other person.
Right.
And it's the responsibility of every person who's HIV negative to make sure that they don't if they don't get the virus.
Wow.
Now, if we have that contract with each other, you're HIV negative, you're committed to not getting infected, I'm HIV positive, I'm committed to not infecting another person, we now again have the roadmap to end the epidemic.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. We're having a good time here. We're trying to educate. The AIDS Awareness Show. That's what we're talking about. Conspiracies. We're talking about safe sex. We're talking about prevention and maybe even a cure. Somebody call me at 855-369-9898. I'm sitting here with Phill Wilson, Jesse Henderson, and William Alamo. And it's going down up in here. I have a question for all of my callers because I'm coming to you now. Should unprotected sex be a thing of the past, whether you're married or not? Should unprotected sex be a thing of the past? I know people out there are like, this is crazy. He is crazy as hell. I'm asking. Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. Lorenzo from Texas, you're the first. Let's go.
Hey, good evening, everybody. For that question you just asked, man, when you get married, man, I don't know. I think it's got to be on a case-by-case basis. Like, in other words, if you know that you with someone that you think is kind of shady, that may creep a little bit, maybe you should. But then if y'all faithful or whatever and you really believe and love and trust that person, I think, maybe you shouldn't use protection. And to the panel, I want to see if y'all can speak to, like, living with HIV, because I feel that a lot of youth and a lot of people, period, are scared to go get tested because they think their life is going to be over or within the next 5 or 10 years, or just to feel living with HIV. Maybe they just might be scared to not know what the reality is of living with it. And also, not to get too personal, but the gentleman with HIV, have you refrained from having sex? I mean, is sex overdose? I guess what I'm asking. When you have HIV, because we see Magic had a baby, and just see if you can speak to that. Thank you.
That's good. That's a damn good question. A lot of people want to know, Phill. Handle it.
Well, no, I do not abstain from having sex. I've been infected since I was 24. I'm now 55. That's a long time to abstain. But I take precautions. Number one, I've educated myself now on how to have sex without risking the possibility of infecting my partner.
How do you do it? Somebody's listening right now. Maybe this is the blueprint. Tell them, how do you do it?
Number one, I always use a condom. That's the first and foremost. Number two, I am often in a relationship, so my sexual activity is in the context of a relationship, and my partner is committed to protecting himself, and I'm committed to protecting my partner, and I'm committed to having a healthy relationship. It's really as simple as that. Today, in 2011, people can be in it's called serodiscordant couple, where one is positive and one is negative. We just had a clinical trial that came out that showed that if people who are HIV positive are on treatment, they reduce the ability of infection by 96%. Now, that's another thing that we can do. I am on treatment. Now, my viral load is undetectable. So the combination of me adhering to my treatment, so my viral load is undetectable, which means that I'm least likely to be able to transmit the virus, plus using a condom and protecting my partner, that does it.
Oh, my goodness. It's a lot of information here. I'm going to come back and ask you what a viral load is because a lot of people want to know. We got to take a quick break, but I'm going back to callers as well. This is the AIDS Awareness Show. We're talking about safe sex prevention, the cure, maybe, and conspiracies. When we return to the Voice of Reason, I'll be back in 2.2. Don't forget to call me, 855-369-9898. See ya. How many of you need to go see the doctor? You can call us right now, 855-369-9898. We got people in here that can give you resources to get yourself checked out. What is your status? And once again, follow me on Twitter at ZoWilliams right now. And go to my website, www.ZoWilliams.com. And don't forget about my relationship roundtable in Chicago on the 25th. My producer keeps making me repeat that, but you got to do this right now. Follow me at Twitter at ZoWilliams. I need your questions. I need your remarks. I need your responses. Or you can hit us at Foxxhole. That's Foxxhole. And give us your responses. We want to know what you think about this. Should unprotected sex be a thing of the past, with AIDS just running amok in America, in Africa? Africa is damn near lost. We just might as well forget on. Africa might just turn into an amusement park one day because it's just on the edge. And, there's a lot of conspiracies around that. We got another author coming up that's going to speak to that. But before we do that, Phill has to go. But Phill, give us your parting shots. Give us your website, where people can find you. And you got tips for us. Leave with a bang. Talk to them.
Absolutely. The first thing that I think that people need to know is that we are making progress, particularly over the last 18 months. We've had a number of very, very important scientific breakthroughs. We have a breakthrough around vaginal microbicides. These are gels that women can use that provide protection against HIV. That's very, very important. We had a study that showed that a thing called pre-exposure prophylaxis works. That means that you can take a pill. And for people who are HIV negative, and that can provide protection from HIV. It can prevent you from getting infected. So we're studying that. Just most recently, there was a study that came out showing treatment as protection, as prevention, where people who are HIV positive, if they're on treatment, they reduce their viral load. Viral load is the amount of HIV in your blood system. If we can reduce your viral load to undetectable, that can reduce your ability to transmit the virus by over 96%. So the combination of pre-exposure prophylaxis is for people who are HIV negative. It can reduce their risk by over 90%. Treatment as prevention can reduce your ability to transmit the virus by over 96%. There's microbicides, there are condoms that's getting tested. All of these things are steps toward ending the AIDS epidemic. The last thing is that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you can do something to end the AIDS epidemic. We call it the 4 gets. The first get is to get informed. Knowledge is a powerful tool in the war against HIV. What you don't know can kill you. Number 2 is to get tested. Knowing your HIV status is your responsibility. Knowing your partner's HIV status can save your life. Number 3 is to get treated. HIV is no longer the automatic death sentence that it once was. I personify what can happen when people with HIV have the love and support of family and friends and have access to proper medical care. 5 years ago, I was at Kaiser Sunset. I was on my deathbed. The doctors gave me less than 24 hours to live. Since then, I've run 2 marathons. Wow. Treatment can save your life. We need to get the word out about treatment. In black communities in particular, where we have widening HIV health disparities because people are not on treatment. People don't go into treatment often until 12 months before they have a full-blown AIDS diagnosis. That's too late. So get informed, get tested, get treated, get involved. Calvin Rolock, the founder of the Black Fund, used to say, nobody can save us from us but us. Now, there are roles for the government to play. If they don't, what are we going to do about it? Now, there's roles for corporations, for foundations. My family is from New Orleans. And if we learn nothing from Hurricane Katrina, we learn this. They're not going to send the boats for us.
You got to do it yourself.
So we got to do it ourselves, and we can do it ourselves.
Right.
If each and every one of us are accountable for our own lives and responsible for our own lives and for each other. Now, that's what's got us to this point in our lives right now. We have survived to this point because we have been a community that responded to each other. And today, we are all a part of a human community.
Exactly.
And we all need to take care of each other. the Black AIDS Institute website, or I'm going to get yelled at by my team. If you want more information, you can go to our website, www.blackaids.org. That's www.blackaids.org. If you want to get involved in the Greater Than AIDS movement, you can go to greaterthan.org. And you can get all sorts of information about where you can get tested, how you can find a doctor, information about HIV. We just released a new report that gives you the history of the AIDS epidemic from a black perspective. You can download that report on our website. And at the end of the day, this is a battle that we can win. We should never, ever lose sight of that. This is a battle that we can win, but it requires each and every one of us to take action.
Right. Hey, that was Phill Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. I urge you, go to his website, get informed, get all the gets that he laid out. There was 1,600 gets. I want you to go look up every get. They're like commandments now. Go find Phill Wilson. Very appreciative of you coming to the show. Thank you very much,
sir.
Thank
you, my brother Zo.
And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce another guest, ladies and gentlemen, to join Jesse Hernandez and William Alamo of the St. John's organization. This guy right here is about to turn this show upside down. It's about to be crazy. Brother's name is John Rappaport. He wrote a book called AIDS Inc. This is heavy now. This is very heavy, guys. I want you guys to tune in right now. 855-369-9898. Get to your phone lines because you're going to want to talk to this guy, and you're going to want to talk to the people that are in the studio with me right now. Call me. 855-369-FOX-9898. This is the AIDS Awareness Show. We're talking about conspiracies, safe sex, prevention, and possibly the cure. Let's talk about it right now. John Rappaport has worked as an investigative reporter for 35 years. He's published articles in CBS Health Watch, LA Weekly, Spin Magazine, and other newspapers and magazines in the U.S. and Europe. Nominated early in his career for a Pulitzer Prize, John has become known as one of the most relentless independent medical reporters in the world. He is the author of AIDS Inc., Scandal of the Century. Get to your phone lines right now as a call to action. 855-369-9898. I'm telling you, John's about to bring the ruckus. Okay, I'm not going to read his whole bio. John, welcome to the Voice of Reason with ZoWilliams on Foxxhole Radio. I am so excited right now. I know you can hear it in my tone. Welcome, man. Talk to the millions that are eagerly waiting to hear what you have to say.
Good to be here. Well, basically, I come at this from a completely different angle. And what I discovered in doing research for my book is three basic things. HIV was never proved to cause AIDS or any disease. The treatment for many, many people, the drug treatment, is sheer poison. And three, the label AIDS itself is a complete deception.
Wow.
So we start from that premise.
How so? When you because they're listening and they want to know how so. How is AIDS a complete deception, and how does HIV not lead to AIDS? Because the leading scientists say HIV is the precursor to AIDS. Talk to me.
Exactly. Well, the leading scientists are wrong, as they've been wrong in many other cases in research, and they have positions to protect and money. And they can't double back on what they said in 1984 when they announced that it was the cause of AIDS, despite all the contrary evidence. In Africa, what's actually happening is that people have been dying from the same factors at a very high rate for a long time. Contaminated water supplies, starvation, generation-to-generation hunger, stolen land, and lack of sanitation and overcrowding. And this has never been remedied by their governments, by international health agencies, by all these wealthy nations that claim to be there to help them. If you actually correct those aspects, then people get better, they get healthier. What was called AIDS originally in 1985 in Africa was all the symptoms of what I just indicated to you. And I had a very interesting interview once with a doctor who had a small clinic in Uganda, and he said to me, because he knew I was writing the book, he said, listen, we had people in a clinic there. They were too ill to treat with any medicines. So what we did was we started a little farm, and we grew soy on the farm, and we made soy products, and they could sell it. They worked in the fields as they could. They made a little bit of money. They ate better food. They were in a sanitary environment. It wasn't overcrowded. They could relax and rest. And gradually they got to the point where they were all completely healthy. These were people who had been diagnosed with AIDS. And he said, at that point, I had no idea what to do with them. And I said, well, did it ever occur to you that you just cured their immune systems? And that what's really being called AIDS all around the world is actually immune system collapse, but not from HIV, from a variety of causes in different populations. That if you actually go in there and you remedy what's destroying a person's immune system and bring them back to a high state of health, whatever you want to call it, AIDS, HIV, doesn't matter. They're now healthy. And in the course of writing my book, I interviewed many, many people who have been diagnosed as HIV positive or full-blown AIDS. They had completely recovered their health. What they did was they ignored the whole HIV death diagnosis. They didn't take the toxic drugs. They brought themselves back to a state of high health, whatever it took. In some people, it was getting off of street drugs. In others, it was unprotected sex with many, many partners that led to multiple instances of sexually transmitted diseases and immunosuppressive antibiotics in huge quantities. In other people, it was something else entirely, exposure to environmental chemicals. But if they got in front of a really good practitioner that found out what was wrong with their immune system, their individual immune system, and they corrected it through commitment, hard work, and so forth, they completely recovered their health, and they stayed healthy. And I've kept in touch with many of them over the years.
But, John, what do you say about the guy who just left the studio, Phill Wilson, who contracted AIDS at 24, and he has full-blown AIDS, and he's 55 years old? If it's not AIDS, what then is he sick of?
Well, I have no idea, because as I say, in every individual case, you have to sit down with the person and do a full history and find out, starting from this premise, because you see, what AIDS is said to be is the collapse of your immune system. Okay, so what they've done, the researchers, is they pinned it all onto this one little virus supposedly discovered in a Maryland lab called HIV. But in fact, if you go into these different supposed high-risk groups, you find, hey, there's non-viral factors that are suppressing these people's immune systems. For example, in my research, I discovered that in New York City, in the late 1970s, before this started breaking out, there were many, many gay men who had been given huge preventive doses of antibiotics for years and years and years by their doctors, and that this had destroyed their immune system and their digestive system and caused all kinds of infections. Nothing is going to remedy that except building back up the healthy bacteria in your digestive system. But that's those people. In somebody else's case, it's something else. You have to find out exactly what it is in each individual case. And if you don't do that, then you risk the possibility that the person is going to die. That's just the way it is. And
John,
that's what I discovered.
John, we have Jessie Hernandez. She's in the building right now. She's from St. John's Well Child and Family Center. Jessie, what does this sound like to you? How do you respond?
The way I respond, he's saying that HIV is highest in African Americans.
Right.
Okay. So what it sounds to me that he's saying is that African Americans are just genetically wired to have a low immune system. Is that what we're talking about?
Go deeper.
Absolutely
is African Americans?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I said nothing of the kind, nor do I imply it. It has nothing to do with overall populations or races or anything. It has to do, as I said, I think 3 times by now, with the individual. What is suppressing that person's immune system? And here's another kicker, the HIV test itself. The HIV test, actually, when you get down to it, the one that's done most frequently across the world is called an antibody test. It registers the reaction of the immune system to the presence of some invader like a virus in the body. Prior to 1984, when it was announced that HIV was the cause of AIDS, if you had antibodies, or that part of the immune system was active against the germ, doctors all over the world would say, well, you're doing well, because that shows that your immune system is actually in action and active. And all of a sudden, that was turned totally on its head, one of the major crimes of the 20th century in medicine. Doctors now began to say, well, you're showing antibodies to HIV. That means that you're either sick or you're going to get sick or you're dying already, and therefore we have to give you these powerful toxic drugs. So just because you test positive means nothing whatsoever. In fact, I have a document from the FDA and spoke to a representative at the FDA about this, and they said to me, we're doing studies now on trying to develop an HIV vaccine, and here's what's going to happen. If a person takes a vaccine, it's going to produce HIV antibodies in their system. And now, if they ever went in for an HIV blood test, the doctor could interpret that as meaning that they had AIDS or they were going to get AIDS. So we're going to give them a letter that they carry around for the rest of their life that says, you just got the vaccine and you're fine. I said, wait a minute. Do you see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're saying that if the body produces natural antibodies against HIV, that means that you're sick or you're going to get sick or you're going to die. But if the vaccine produces the exact same antibodies, all of a sudden you would be immune from HIV and AIDS. And the guy said, bye-bye, and hung up the phone.
Wow. Jesse Hernandez and William Alamo, they're in here and they're beside themselves. They went from 2 people to 6 because they've split apart in disbelief in what you're saying. Jesse?
First and foremost, all vaccines are not a live virus. So that's where he's mistaken. Whoever this FDA guy, he must have been smoking, because all vaccines are not a live virus. So
they
you
all
cannot
produce
test
antibodies.
positive.
Absolutely.
No, sir.
All of them produce antibodies.
No,
Same
sir,
thing.
because if that was the truth, then we would be having more children running around with measles, mumps, rubella, polio, and everything else that they're getting vaccines for. So that's not true.
No, I'm just saying the whole purpose, if you go back to the literature and you see what a vaccine basically does, is it produces antibodies. And that's what doctors say when they
Only
see
a
the
live
antibodies.
virus.
They say
Only
you
a
are now
live virus.
immune to the disease. Congratulations. That is
Only
the
a live virus.
standard.
And you're only going to have a reaction to a live virus if you have an autoimmune deficiency. That means that once you get an MMR shot, if you have an autoimmune deficiency, then you will have a reaction. Only babies that do not have an autoimmune deficiency don't have a reaction.
Jesse, what is an MMR?
Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine.
Ah, got it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's getting
That's a live
heated.
virus.
It's getting heated. We're talking about the AIDS Awareness Show. We've got John Rappaport on the phone. We've got Jesse Hernandez and William Alamo in the building. This thing is going crazy right now. Again, I mean, some of the things that are being presented here are just mind-blowing to me. Let me ask John another question. Have you actually interviewed people who were quote-unquote healed from AIDS? I mean, that just sounds...
Who were what?
Healed from
Yeah,
AIDS.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I've talked to a number of them.
on the record, John,
and I
there is
them
no
over the
cure.
years. Absolutely.
But on the record, there is no cure. And you're saying that you've interviewed people that have been healed. What was the process by which they were healed? How did you authenticate their claims? How were you able to fact check and cross check? And did you talk to their doctors? I mean, there's a lot of questions that are coming to me right now to say, how did you prove it?
Those questions. Here's the answer to those questions. You give a person AZT, which is a toxic drug, originally a chemotherapy drug, that causes cells to break up and not reproduce, just
Let's
like
get straight
chemotherapy
on AZT.
does.
Wait a minute. Let's
And
get
you
straight
give
on AZT.
enough of that AZT to a person, you can kill that person. Or sometimes people at low doses can handle the drug for a long period of time. So you follow a person who's been on AZT for, say, 10 years, and the person is still alive, and you say, well, you're doing okay. All right. Now, the doctor can't tell you whether the person's going to live forever or how long they're going to live. And in my case, what I did was I interviewed and followed people over a period of 10, 15 years who had never taken the drugs, who had rejected the whole idea of HIV as a lethal germ. And they put their health back together depending upon what it was that the problem was that was destroying their immune system in the first place, and they remained healthy for 10 to 15 years. So you can say, if you want to, that person was cured, they're not cured, they're healed, they're not healed. All I know is over that long period of time, they've stayed healthy. And in fact, in the San Francisco men's study, which is the largest cohort ever examined and tracked over the years who have been diagnosed as HIV positive, there was a very significant element of those men, numbers of those men, who had been diagnosed as HIV positive and did not take the drugs. And I spoke to one of the lead researchers in that study,
John,
and I said, well,
John,
what did you find with these people?
John,
and they said they're still
John.
alive and they're healthy. I said, you don't think that that's worth trumpeting as important news?
Hold on one second,
no,
John.
I don't think so.
Hold on, John. Let me just do this because you're dropping a lot of information, and I want everybody to get every ounce of what you're saying, but I got to take a quick break. And when I come back, I want you to finish that thought. I want you to go back a couple of sentences and then pick right back up, because Jesse Hernandez and William Alamo do not agree. And I know there are a lot of people out there that might be suffering, that might have never heard of this information, that are curious, want to know more. Call me, 855-369-9898. You're listening to the AIDS Awareness Show. Safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and the cure. ZoWilliams, Foxxhole Radio, voice of reason, Sirius XM 98. I'll be back in 2.2. Wow! Ladies and gentlemen, this show is crazy right now. If you're just tuning in, it's the AIDS Awareness Show. We're talking about safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and the cure. Now, we got a controversial guest on right now. My man is cold-blooded. Just like I was telling my in-studios, you might not agree with him, but he know his stuff. And he talking about how people can be healed of AIDS. Speaking of that, there's only one documented, proven fact that there's a guy that actually got cured of AIDS recently. Timothy Ray Brown of San Francisco, previously known to the medical community as the Berlin patient, has become the first person to ever be cured of AIDS. After a stem cell bone marrow transplant, doctors say his AIDS was eradicated? Whew. His bone marrow donor was one of a very small percentage of people who are immune to HIV. Remember, we talked about that earlier in the show when we said only 1% of the Caucasian population, not African, not Asian, not in between, just the Caucasians have 1% that are immune. I believe that it was genetically engineered for me personally. We'll get into something else later. But this dude was cured of HIV. He received a second bone marrow transplant after a resurgence of leukemia, which he had been cured of. Doctors still aren't sure what part of his treatment allowed his body to purge the virus, but clinical trials are scheduled to begin in 2012. John Rappaport, can you talk to us? Because it seems like you know what you're talking about here. Talk to us more about AZT, because Jesse Hernandez vehemently disagrees with your perspective on AZT. Finish your point on AZT, please.
It's basically a chain terminator. It was originally a chemotherapy drug that was researched at NIH in about 1960. It was tested on rats with leukemia. That means it was a chemo drug, and it was found to be ineffective. Then they pulled it up off the shelf in about 1986 when they started clinical trials on it, because the attitude was, well, we got people dying all over the place of AIDS, so we're desperate, so let's try this and see what happens. So they did a clinical trial, which was covered in great detail by a tremendous journalist in New York named John Lauritsen, and he showed that the clinical trial of that drug was a complete deception and a hoax, and sloppy and incompetent, and the FDA went ahead and approved the drug anyway. It's a failed chemo drug, and given at the dosage that it was given for the rest of a person's life, when they let it out on the public, people began to die from the drug. This was shown in the Concord study in Europe. It's a very, very, very toxic drug. Even when they give chemo for cancer, they do it in very small spurts. And here is a chemo drug that destroys the ability of cells to replicate in the body. There have been a number of studies on this. It's very, very highly toxic.
Okay. Jesse Hernandez, you disagree. Tell me why.
We're talking about AZT, which was the first phase of a protease inhibitor to help people with AIDS, with full-blown AIDS. Mm-hmm. What happened is that everything in medicine is trials. Everything is on a trial basis. I don't know if the antibiotic that works for me is going to work for him. So we can't say that AZT was what he was saying, a terribly wrong drug, because there's a lot of people who did well on AZT, especially pregnant women did well when they were on AZT.
So let me get this right, Jesse. You're saying instead of prescribing AZT to everybody, it should be a case-by-case situation?
No, because what we were trying to do was save lives at that point. That was phase one of getting an antiviral, to getting a protease inhibitor, something that was going to help us cure the AIDS, or something that was going to help us bring down the numbers of AIDS at that point.
Wow.
So if women were pregnant and they were on AZT during the pregnancy, babies were born with the antibodies, but 18 months later when babies were tested negative and did not go into HIV. So you tell me, would you rather go through a pregnancy and not save yourself? If the mom, let's play it down. If the moms died, if they went into full-blown AIDS, but here we have another life who is born and the antibodies went away. They did not develop into HIV.
Wow. We got a Twitter response here at Tyree Fletcher. He simply says, so what are all of the millions of Africans sick from? He said, I think education is the key. Safe sex is taught. And he's asking John Rappaport, are you suggesting that people go the holistic route to cure themselves of AIDS?
Well, he's asking what all these people in Africa are sick of. I guess he tuned in late. Listen, there are companies in the United States that can go into African countries. There are companies probably in Africa, in Europe, any place. They can clean up the contaminated water supplies in some of the really sickest areas. They can do it easily, inexpensively. They could do it for years and years and years. Why isn't it being done? Why isn't the World Health Organization saying this is a major, major health problem? And how about hunger? And how about starvation? Where are those corporations that stole all those lands from Native Africans that were great for growing food, and now there is no food on the lands? What about all the overcrowding and the lack of sanitation that causes traditionally horrendous epidemics of all kinds of diseases, makes people lose weight, get very thin, waste away, all the symptoms of what's being called AIDS? Are we going to ignore all that? Well, what's happening is, if you look at these African countries, that's where the massive amounts of dying are happening. And if you want to correct that, you can, if you can get past the dictators of those countries to the people. And if you can't, I don't care what you do over there. I don't care what drugs you give people. I don't care what you diagnose or what you call it. People are going to continue to die. It's a tragedy. It's a crime. People should be in jail because of it. All these doctors who parade around in Africa thinking that they're going to cure the whole situation over there are lying through their teeth, and they know it because it's a public health problem of centuries. It's a crime. It's corporate theft of land from the people. It's starvation. It's bad sanitation. It's overcrowding, and it's contaminated water that's been killing people for centuries.
So, John, let me ask you this: because Phill Wilson was just here, and he basically said that AIDS is about sexual transmission. You're speaking of environmental issues.
That's
here.
right, I am. That's right.
Interesting.
And I'm glad you make the distinction, because HIV is now a smokescreen to obscure what's actually been happening in Africa for centuries. And if you don't get behind the smokescreen, which, of course, certain rulers in Africa don't want you to do because they want to keep their people weak, which certain pharmaceutical interests don't want you to do, which certain kinds of people who are against Africa don't want you to do, if you don't get behind that smokescreen and handle what's actually happening in Africa, people are going to continue to get dying. It's going to go on and on and on.
Okay, so let me do this. I got to let you go, John, but before I do, where can they get your book? Do you have a website? How do people get directly in contact with you? Because I believe you have a unique collection of information that people can learn from. I like to present both sides of the story. I'm a devil's advocate. So where can they find you, bruh?
Website is www.nomorefakenews.com, and they can contact me directly at qjrconsulting@gmail.com.
There you have it. That was John Rappaport. Appreciate you for being on The Voice of Reason. It ain't over. We've got more guests with more information. Of course, in-studio guests right now, we have William Alamo of the St. John's Well Child and Family Center, as well as Jesse Hernandez from the same place. And hey, she's a firecracker if you ain't paying attention. She knows her stuff too. She didn't agree with a single word John had to say. And if you don't agree with John, hey, the phone lines are open, 855-369-9898. And if you've just tuned in, the AIDS Awareness Show, right? Safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and cure. I need you guys to get at me on Twitter at ZoWilliams. Go to my website, www.ZoWilliams.com. Get at me. Let me know what you think, or email me, zo@SiriusXM.com. But before I take this final break, I need you guys to come meet me in Chicago. Oh, not the final break. We're not taking a break. I'm sorry. But I will plug my relationship roundtable in Chicago. The Little Black Pearl Workshop, 1060 East 47th Street, Chicago, Illinois. I'll be there June 25th, 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., my first relationship roundtable of the year. You guys got to come out and support. Let's get active. Let's keep these questions going. Before I introduce my next guest, let me just do this. We put together a list of myths about AIDS, okay? So these are the women, like female myths about AIDS, and we found this stuff. Hopefully it's accurate. Women can't give men HIV. That's a myth we found. And we know Jesse don't believe that crap.
Wrong.
Since somebody wrote, since I am HIV positive, if I get pregnant, I will spread the disease to my unborn baby.
If you're untreated.
If you're untreated, yes or no?
If you're untreated, yes.
Wow. Let's see. He doesn't look like someone with HIV. Can you tell by looking at someone?
No.
Wow. Okay, we breaking down the myths. HIV is the same as AIDS. Yes or no? True or false?
It is false.
And what is the significant difference?
So the difference is that so the initial virus that causes AIDS is HIV.
Uh-huh.
When a person is infected with the virus HIV, if they don't go into any treatment, if they never find out they have it until they start getting the symptoms, then their immune system starts weakening. When it weakens, when their immune cells drop below a certain number, which is, I believe, 200, that's when they're considered to have AIDS.
The immune cell is the T cell, right?
The T cells, CD4 cells,
so
the white cells.
Was that in
blood cells.
1980-something, 84, when the CDC changed the definition of AIDS to the T cell count? And they say after the CDC changed the definition, when they started to count T cells, that's when the AIDS population or number of people with AIDS almost doubled overnight, because they went to the T cell definition of what AIDS actually was. A lot of people thought that was part of the conspiracy as well. If you think it is, call me, 855-369-9898, 855-FOX-9898. We got a great conversation going here. What about this myth? Both my partner and I have HIV, but seeing that we have it, we don't really need to use a condom. True or false?
That is false. Actually, if you have a relationship and you have the HIV virus, your partner might have a more aggressive type of the virus.
A different strain.
A different strain, which can actually, if you're taking medication with your current virus, it can actually conflict and would make you more susceptible to the viral attack, which at that point you would have to take a different regimen of medication. So it's very dangerous to combine a different strain of the virus into your body.
Well, we've got another controversial guest on. Well, I guess I have to take a break before I get him. But before I do that, I got one more.
Or just to finish up on what William was saying about both being positive, one of the people in the couple can also be sick.
Really?
So that will break down the person who's not sick system also.
Wow.
So that's why protected sex, even though you're both positive, is so important.
Wow. Hey, if you're not learning something tonight, maybe you don't have a brain. Anyway, 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. This is the AIDS Awareness Show. We're talking about safe sex prevention, conspiracy, and the cure. I got one more before I go to break. The government produced AIDS to reduce a certain group of people. Is that a myth?
That's a big myth. Actually, well, there was.
How do you know? How do you know, William?
A
lot of people want to know.
I did
How do
my
you know?
research. I did my research. So there was a conspiracy saying that it came from a particular vaccine, the polio vaccine.
Was it like a cancer vaccine?
Right,
I heard that.
yeah.
By
So,
Robert Gallo, the actual founder of the AIDS virus, who was a federal researcher, correct?
Correct.
All right, go deeper.
So apparently it was found, there was a particular strain of the virus that was found, and an injection that was given to actually about how much, it was about 98 million people that received this vaccine. But later, through research, they found that it wasn't contaminated, that it was actually a different type of virus. So it was in no way related to the HIV virus.
Okay, what about the monkey?
Oh, yeah, the monkey.
You see, you don't know. You don't know if it's a conspiracy or not. See, this is all games. We're about to take another quick break, ladies and gentlemen. But before I do, I need you to tune in to the Foxxhole tomorrow. It's very important that you do so, because the Jamie Foxx Show, the Friday show, the flagship at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a celebrity-packed show with today's hottest issues, along with my boy, Johnny Mac, Lewis Dix, and Brandy McGee. Tune in to see what Jamie Foxx is up to this week, only on the Foxxhole, Sirius XM 98. I'll be back in 2.2. Holla. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason, is back in the building. We got another barn burner cooking. It's the AIDS show, man. This is what pisses me off about my people, though. You know, serious topics that mean something to us. This is why a lot of people are getting sick. I believe it. I believe entertainment is a problem, because entertainment is a mode and a method of escapism. People are trying to escape their problems, so they turn to the Foxxhole so they can laugh, right? And rightly so. Ain't nothing wrong with laughing. But you know what's better than, or it's equally as important as laughing? Learning, growing, developing. How can you protect yourself if you're ignorant? Listen, you become the defender of yourself. You become the warrior of your life, right? You're able to defend yourself against all types of ills when you have a fully stocked mental, spiritual toolbox. If you know how to utilize the tools in your toolbox, that's how you live a life not of just fear. Because a lot of people are afraid. So what they'll do is, that's too deep for me. I don't want to hear that. Let me go turn on the Jeffersons. Or let me turn on the Sanford and Son or SpongeBob. Let me get away from reality. Well, guess what? Reality has a way of sticking to you closer than herpes does. Because regardless of what you do, you can't shake your reality. And the reality is, we need to be prepared to live in the kind of world that we live in today. It's full of perils. We're talking about the AIDS awareness show. Safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, the cure. Call me right now, 855-369-9898. That's what I need you to do. I'm bringing in another guest, but before I do that, I want to introduce you guys who just tuned in to the guests that are sitting here with me. From St. John's Well Child and Family Center, we have William Alamo, who is the Man Up Coordinator. We also have from the same organization, that's the St. John's Well Child and Family Center, Jessie Hernandez. She is the support service administrator. But we also have someone who is quite heavily credentialed, who is about to come on right now. Dude is a cold piece of work. We like to find the cold pieces of work to bring on this show. Let me tell you what he did, what he's done. He's received a PhD in clinical community psychology from the University of South Carolina in 1990. He is a professor in the psychology department of the University of Connecticut and director of the Southeast HIV AIDS Research and Evaluation Project. That's research. That's the Southeast AIDS HIV AIDS Research and Evaluation. It's an acronym, SHARE project. His research focuses on social and behavioral aspects of AIDS in the U.S. and South Africa and is supported by the National Institute of Health. Okay. He was the recipient of the Distinguished Scientific Award for early career contribution. Let me just say, dude is cold as ice. and I want to bring him in right now. I mean, his list goes on and on and on of all the things that he's done and accomplished, and we really are very appreciative for having him in the building. Without further ado, none other than PhD Seth C. Kallichman. How do you pronounce your name, sir? Let me get it right.
Perfect.
I said it right? Kallichman? There we have it. Seth, talk to me, man. Is AIDS and HIV real? Or is this just a big old conspiracy? I see your book in my hands right now, Denying AIDS, Conspiracy Theories, Pseudoscience, and the Human Tragedy. Would you tell me what in the Feast of Samhain is going on in the world?
Well, first of all, Zoe, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a real honor, and it's exciting for me. And I've been listening in, and I want to tell you that I think you've really done a great service to the community by having the previous guest on. In fact, I think your having that guest on is exactly the same motivation I had for writing the book, Denying AIDS, except I think that your show is much more powerful because people don't really believe that these AIDS denialists even exist. And the best way to know that they exist and to hear how really wacky they can be is to hear from their own mouths that AZT is a toxic poison and that people in Africa are dying of AIDS, but AIDS isn't caused by HIV. It's caused by all these other African diseases that have been around forever, and HIV is just a shroud. I think that those kind of words just speak for themselves. What's really going on in the world with AIDS is a lot of bad things. In this country, we have 56,000 new HIV infections a year. The vast majority of them are among men who have sex with men, and the vast majority of them are among black men and black women. And so the African-American community has been hit very hard and continues to be, so there's a lot of bad things happening, and there's a lot of good things happening. There's prevention breakthroughs happening as we speak. There's new treatments every day. AZT is one drug. AZT was the first drug. AZT was used in very high doses when doctors didn't know what they were doing with this thing. Now there's over 40 different drugs that are done in combinations that keep people alive and healthy for a long, long time. We don't have hospital wards anymore where people with AIDS have to go and die. People with AIDS are now living healthier, more productive lives because of the medical care that they get when they can get it. Access to care is a big problem, not just in Africa and Asia, but in places where I work, like in Atlanta. The assistance programs that help to get people the drugs that they need are short on money. And so there are people that can't afford the copay. So it's a real mixed bag. AIDS is one of those things that, it's obviously a horrible thing, but the reality of AIDS is also that it's better now than it was before. People with AIDS are active, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. And so, there's really a lot to talk about.
Well, let me ask you these questions really quickly. Let's run them off, and then we're going to open up the phone lines, and we're going to go to some callers, and hopefully you can stay on and answer some of the callers' questions. But let me hit you with a couple right upside the head, right off the top. Should people go get tested for HIV? We had Phill Wilson here. We have Jesse Hernandez here. We have William Alamo here, and they are proponents and advocates for testing. And people think testing is very, very important. What is your perspective on testing?
Well, my perspective on testing has changed. It changed in 1996. Before 1996, people were told that they should get tested for HIV, and they should know their HIV status. And I felt back then that before 1996 that it would be a very difficult decision, I think, because there really weren't treatments available for people. If you found out you were HIV infected, that was important to know. But for what? To protect yourself and others? You should protect yourself and others anyway. But that all changed in 1996 with treatment breakthroughs. And today, I'm a big advocate of HIV antibody testing. I think that people should get tested. They should know their HIV status. If they are infected, they can get treatment. They can get care that will keep them healthy for a long time. However, the problem that I see with testing is that testing is not prevention. It doesn't keep you from becoming infected. So just because you find out you're infected That's
I see what
great
you're
news.
saying.
And then you
I
got to
see
keep
what you're
yourself
saying.
negative.
Seth, I see what you're saying. You're saying testing is just checking, but testing isn't actually preventative measure. It's
That's
not
right.
a preventative measure. That's what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely.
Got it. Man, this is crazy. You want to go to callers? Do you want to field some callers, Seth?
I'd be happy to.
Jesse? William? Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, Foxxhole Radio, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. Tonight's show is the AIDS awareness show, safe sex, prevention, conspiracy, and possibly the cure. Rodney from D.C., you're in the building. Let's talk. You there, Rodney? I hear you coughing. You got it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, talk to me, Rodney. Let's go.
Okay, I'm from the U.S. Justice Department. It's a conspiracy. I'm going to tell you a secret. When the last time you see any doctor come on TV and do a national commercial to tell you to wear a condom so you won't catch HIV? You've never seen it, and you never will see it.
Why is that?
It's
Go
a
deeper.
conspiracy. Like, I'm going to tell you another secret. Go to your doctor and tell him you want to produce a commercial, and you want him to do it, and watch the expression in his face.
Okay. All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate the information. And he seems to be very vehement in his stance. He's strong on it. Poet Shafiq from Delaware. What do you have to say?
Brother Zoe, this one here is blowing my mind. My question seems kind of silly now after listening to all this information, but I've been having an argument with my homies for a bit over 5 years. The argument is, can you contract HIV or AIDS from oral sex if a girl has it and performs oral sex on you, or even if you perform oral sex on her?
Seth, answer that.
You know what? There's a lot of people with a lot of college degrees that have been trying to figure this out and argue and debate about it too. So you're not alone. Oral sex hasn't been completely sorted out. However, there are some things that are very clear. If you're talking about a person going down on another person, the person who's going down, the person who gets the semen in their mouth, might be at some minuscule risk. There are people who say they have become infected that way, but having mouth to vagina sex, there's not a single documented case. And being the recipient, the male who's getting oral sex, there's not a single case. But there are a few cases out of hundreds of thousands where people have become infected by getting infected semen in their mouth, but it has not been completely sorted out. We cannot say that that is a safe behavior, but we sure know it's a whole lot safer than anal and vaginal intercourse without condoms.
Wow.
So it's been a hard thing for people in public health because you can't say it's safe, man.
Wow. Jesse Hernandez or William?
Yeah, well, I mean, like he was saying, there might not be a risk for contracting HIV, but there are other STDs that they can contract: herpes, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, everything they can be exposed to. So that doesn't mean they can go out there and have sex without protection. Definitely use a flavored condom or a dental dam.
A flavored condom always works. Breaker19 from Florida. Are you wearing a flavored condom? Talk to us right now.
Hi, Zoe. Thanks for taking the call. Just wanted to hit on a few things, if I may. One is population control. There's data out, and I'm sorry I don't have all my research with me. I'm in transit now. But there's research alluding to the fact that HIV, was put out to control the population of Africans, whereas here in the U.S. and to those countries that we export to, I think there are about 13 countries that we saw it as a national threat. That if these countries continue to reproduce and grew in numbers, it would be a national security threat to us. So if you look at that same list, you'll see that those are the countries that we are exporting to right now. Now, if you look at the data for the U.S., you'll also see that our population rate has our growth rate, population growth rate, has decreased. If you look at Asia or China, you'll see they have the one-child policy. So the information is leading to, it's all about population control. Now,
So
if you
AIDS,
look at
are you saying AIDS is the United States way of controlling its population, whereas the more benign way, it would seem in comparison, China is saying, okay, just have one child? You saying we went the route of plague over policing how many children we should have? Is that what you're saying? And he's gone. Sorry that he's gone. Jesus, but that was good. He brings up a valid point. We were arguing about it earlier.
There's a big population, AIDS population, HIV population in China.
And it's growing.
And it's growing.
It's growing.
It is. So even though they have a one-child minimum or maximum, there's still a big HIV/AIDS population there.
Wow. Is he
If
still
you
with
wanted
us?
to use a sexually transmitted disease to control the population, it would be really good if it didn't mostly affect gay men who don't have babies.
Wow. Great point. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the voice of reason, ZoWilliams on Foxxhole Radio. We're going in on Facebook or on Twitter. Somebody said regarding my question, was AIDS man-made? I think this is at Philly Birdman. He says, yes, I think so. I think it was made for money. They make billions off of finding a cure, raising money, raising awareness. He says, I say, look at the money line. That's what at Philly Birdman says. Of course, at Rob Huntsville says, maybe people are afraid to talk because AIDS in the black community is associated with gay, and to be black and gay is probably the worst thing you can be. That was at Rob Huntsville. Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. Before I go to my next caller, let me do this. There are some black celebrities that have died. Let's talk about a few of the black celebrities that have died of AIDS. Max Robinson, Howard Rollins, Theodore Teddy Wilson, Kevin Peter Hall, Larry Riley, Willie Smith. Okay. Ooh, okay. Yeah. Raymond St. Jacques. I don't know any of these. Melvin Lindsay, actor Gene Anthony Ray. Remember the singer back in the day, Jermaine Stewart? Died of AIDS. What about hip-hop legend Eazy-E? Whoa, hey, it gets cold. And then, of course, we have a list of people, celebrities, African-American celebrities that are fighting AIDS, HIV and AIDS in the black community. You have Cheryl Lee Ralph. You have Maria Davis. You have Blair Underwood. You have Marvelyn Brown. You have Magic Johnson, of course, Common, Phill Wilson, Alicia Keys. There are a lot of people out there that are fighting this thing. But I think Seth Kalikman brings up a great point. Before I go to my next callers, I need to understand the conspiracies that are surrounding, the AIDS virus. And a lot of people, they say if they can decode the gene, and now they can do designer genes. Now, if you want a particular type of child, you can design the genes to fit that way. And, of course, there's the issue of only, 1% of the Caucasian race being immune to, the AIDS virus. And then you have the flip of that. The people who are being affected the most by the AIDS virus are people of color. So a lot of people feel like this was a genetically engineered kind of, maybe it wasn't population control. Maybe it was just classism on the highest level. Talk to me about that, Seth.
Yeah, it's a really sad situation, and unfortunately, it's rooted in historical truth. So what we have is we have a history of, for good reason, not being able to trust the government and not being able to trust the public health enterprise. All you have to do is say Tuskegee. All you have to do is talk about access to health care. And so, for good reason, minority populations, especially African Americans, can easily buy into into a government mistrust, a public health mistrust myth. And that's perfectly understandable as far as I'm concerned. But the AIDS conspiracy theories are really myths. There's no evidence to support any of them. And in some ways, this has been going on since the beginning of AIDS. And I had a friend in Atlanta who used to say, it doesn't matter, right? Because if the house is on fire, you don't want to know where the fire started. You just want to put the fire out. So if HIV was concocted by the government, it's still killing people. We still need to protect people. We still need to get treatment. But actually, that isn't true, because we have research now. There's a researcher at Harvard University named Laura Bogart. She actually used to be in L.A. She's done great research that shows that actually African Americans who believe conspiracy theories are less likely to get tested, and those who test positive are more likely to ignore their diagnosis and not get treatment. And those who do get treatment are less likely to take their medications.
Good stuff.
So the conspiracy theories actually are doing harm. They're not just sort of wacky, funky things. And they're very prevalent on the internet, which is where most of us now turn for information.
Wikipedia. Wikipedia.
It's even worse, because there are AIDS denialists and conspiracy theory websites that present themselves to be science. It's sort of like your previous caller who said, I don't have my statistics with me right now.
So, Seth, let me do this really quickly. We got to take a quick break, but when I come back, I promise you're going to finish that thought. We got to take a quick break. ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. This show is absolutely on fire. If you don't know about it, you better tell a friend. The AIDS Awareness Show, Safe Sex, Prevention, Conspiracy, and Cure. 855-369-9898. I'll be back in 2.2. See you in a minute. Woo! BDP. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoWilliams back in the building. We passing condoms around the studio right now. It's crazy. Hey, man, this is what we got to do. The AIDS Awareness Show, Safe Sex, Prevention, Conspiracy, and Cure. Man, we got a full house. We got guests. We have a new guest coming in. But before I introduce her, allow me to introduce the people that are in the studio right now. We have William Alamo and Jesse Hernandez of the St. John's Well Child and Family Center. They're in the building. We also have PhD, professor extraordinaire, all-around intelligent cat. He just sent me his book. I have it in front of me, called Denying AIDS, Conspiracy Theory, Pseudoscience, and Human Tragedy. This is Seth Kellickman. He's in the building. And let me just do this really quickly. Let me introduce my next guest. She's online right now. She's been holding on very patiently, but she's also a PhD. We don't play here on the Voice of Reason. We try to bring you the top people so you can be educated, so you can be informed, so you can know where to go to get this information, because ignorant society can be nothing but a sheep. They have to follow somebody. So why don't you empower yourself and be the leader of your own life by getting the tools you need to change your life for the better. Let me bring her in right now. Her name is Ida Sussner, PhD, Columbia, 1980, professor of anthropology at CUNY Graduate Center and Hunter College. She's an adjunct professor of socio-medical sciences at the HIV Center, Columbia University. She's a cold piece of work. Has conducted ethnographic research with respect to the urban social movements in the United States and the gendered politics, local, national, and global, of the AIDS epidemic in New York City, Puerto Rico, and Southern Africa. She's got a lot of credentials. I cannot read this phone book full of them, but let me bring her in right now. Ida Sussner, speak to the millions. They need your information. Let's talk.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Well, let's just get right to it. Seth is on the phone with us, and everybody right now can answer these questions. And don't forget, callers, I will be coming back to you. It's important that you get at me. But let me ask you this question, Ida.
Yeah.
Your book focuses specifically on women. Why do you see that as such an important aspect of the AIDS movement?
Well, I think it's particularly important because people first understood AIDS as I think I heard you say before, only relating to gay men, and so even the counting of people was ignoring a lot of the women. And in fact, if we look at the epidemic, not only in the United States but elsewhere, it's increasingly among women. So in Southern Africa, when they first did the research, they found 1 man to 1 woman, 1 to 1, the epidemic. in the United States, when they first did the research, they found 10 men to 1 woman. Now, even in the U.S., 1/4 of the infections are women. So, and in Southern Africa now, among young people, it's like 5 women to 1 man. So there's been a major, major growth in the epidemic, which we all know. But also because it was kind of classified as only being among gay men, a lot of the issues of women, particularly in the United States, have been very much not paid attention to. And now, actually, worldwide, it's practically more women than men.
Wow. What would you say the numbers are, the difference between men and women being infected with the AIDS virus?
Well, in the global, it's probably 50% of each, something like that. And, like millions, 41 million, something like that. But in Africa, it's 2 women to 1 man in general. And over sub-Saharan Africa, it's something like 60% of the HIV-infected population are women. But if you look at age, among young women, it's 5 young women to 1 young man. And it's the leading cause of death for young girls from like 15 to 25. And the cause of death for men, 25 to 35. So it kills young women earlier, and there are more young women with HIV.
So Seth and Ida, why would you guys? Why is it that women seem to be more susceptible than men? I'm really confused, and I know the listeners want to know why, so we can try to prevent and prepare and educate. Why?
Well, I'll say I don't think that women are necessarily susceptible biologically more than men. We don't know that particularly. But what we do know is the AIDS virus follows, somebody said it's kind of follows misery. It follows subordination and oppression. Whenever there's a population that has less power and less say-so, they're the ones with the highest rates of AIDS. So
you're saying AIDS is really connected to the disenfranchised and the impoverished?
Yes.
Wow. So that's why it's a black thing, or that's why it's a third world thing. Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you. In the U.S., it's the highest rate of growth of AIDS, and one of the highest is among young black women.
How do we protect the sisters? How do we protect? I mean, that's the mother of civilization, black women. How do we protect her?
I heard you talking about condoms, but I didn't hear you say female condoms. Oh, I heard the song, but
yes.
I didn't hear female condoms. I would love to see a rap song about female condoms. We have art made out of female condoms. This is one of the things I work on. So,
tell me about the female condoms. We have a bushel of male condoms, phallic coverings here. But I mean, tell us about a female condom. Tell them about the different varieties, or if there are any out there. What's on the market? What can a woman go get right now to protect herself?
Right now, she can buy a female condom, but you can actually get them, at least I know in New York, and I think in Philadelphia, and probably in California. I'm positive you can get them in California, through the hospitals, and they're subsidized. So they're much cheaper. They'll sell them, and Medicaid covers them, all sorts of things like that. So they came out, they were approved by the FDA in about 1992. However, they haven't been promoted. All the Village Voice and all the magazines said there was a yuck factor, that men wouldn't like them, that, etc. Women wouldn't use them. So they haven't been highly promoted. But in hospitals, people are getting them. A lot of women like them. I use them I gave them out in one of my classes in the.
Let me ask you this, Ida. Does it feel the same? Because a lot of people, say, "Hey, man, the condom, man, takes away the feeling." So does it feel the same?
It feels a lot better than the male condom, and it's men that ask for them. In Southern Africa, when they go to a prostitute, the sex workers, they prefer the female condoms because they're made out of polyurethane. They transfer heat better. And you can't even tell that it's on. And the men say that.
Wow. Man, this is a great conversation. I'm going to go to some callers really quickly. Do you mind joining in with Seth and myself and of course, Jesse and William? We're going to answer questions, hopefully. Do you mind joining in?
No, I enjoy it.
Okay, so before I set up these callers, and myself and Seth and Jesse and William, we talked about this. A lot of people are skeptical. And Seth mentioned the Tuskegee experiments in 1932, right? When they, gave people syphilis and all of that stuff. And then just recently, Hillary Clinton and, the Health and Human Services Secretary, Kathleen Sebelius, came out and apologized for the horrific medical experiments conducted in Guatemala during the 1940s.
Yes.
So, listen, a lot of people, and you could just look at television all day and they'll tell you to get a particular type of medication, but then after they tell you to get the medication, they'll tell you 387 side effects that comes along with it. So a lot of people are really skeptical of the health industry and the medical and the pharmaceutical industry. So a lot of people may not be so willing to go get tested. I'm asking my followers, the callers out there, call me. Let's talk to this. Let's speak to this situation. We've got some professionals here in the studio. They're going to help you deal with it. Call me right now at 855-369-9898. Let's get this stuff off our chest. Daniel from D.C., you're in the building. Let's go.
Hey, just want to just let you know, I work with Jesse and William. I'm at St. John's, but I'm at a conference here or at a meeting in D.C. where we're talking about 30 years of HIV and how we're still getting infections and how we now have to incorporate that into primary care and not separate it, because that adds to the stigma. That adds to it allows for the perpetuation of this is something different. This is not us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you make some great points. I think we also have to, when it comes to medication, remember that sometimes the side effects are I guess the effect is greater than the side effects. So one of the things that we know now is that when people are on medication, HIV positive individuals are on medication and are consistent with medications, they can get to undetectable levels of virus in their system, which has been shown to reduce infection, or they're less likely to transmit the virus if they're undetectable.
So let me ask you this really quickly. We asked this question earlier, and Ida, you can speak to it as well. Regardless of what type of relationship you're in, marriage, long-term committed, whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend, is unprotected sex a thing of the past?
Well, you're asking me. I think that obviously people want to have children, and there are situations where women and men might not want to be protected, but then they have to get tested and they have to make some kind of decision that they...
Even if you're married?
Yes, if you're married.
Wow, this is a cold situation. Andre from California, do you have something to say to Ida? Do you have something to say to me? Do you have something to say to Seth? Talk to us, man.
Hey, I got two questions. And a theory. Theory about black men in the community getting tested. I believe it's because, number one, that they don't believe or know that they're having sex. They believe that they're having sex, but when they have sex, they don't know how soon after they have sex that the disease or contracted the virus. How soon after you take the disease, how soon, once you're exposed to the disease, can you be tested positive for the disease?
Okay. Wow.
And also, my theory is, the reason why it's more prominent in the black community is because the black males, when they do have sex, number one, it'll tell that they're cheating on their spouse if they found positive. And number two, if they sit up there and do get tested and they're tested positive, that they may not know because the biological changes in your body may not be the same as gonorrhea or other diseases. That means you might not be exposed or know the symptoms of the HIV virus, and if it comes as rapidly as the other diseases.
Well, thank you very much for the call, brother. I really appreciate it. But you know what? We're getting close to the end of the show. We really need another 30, 45 hours to deal with this issue. But what I want to do is do a round robin really quickly and get everybody's contact information that's on the phone right now, because we want everybody to reach out to you to empower themselves with your books, with your blogs, with whatever papers you're writing, with whatever organizations you're a part of. Let's start with Ida Susser. Ida, talk to me right now. Where can people find you? Where, your books, what can we do?
Okay, well, there is my book, AIDS, Sex, and Culture, which is really talking about both the U.S. and Southern Africa and some of the problems of inequality and how you can understand it's not about necessarily different behaviors. It's about different levels of oppression where the AIDS comes. But you can also go to athenanetwork.org, which is the group I helped to organize. It's for advancing gender equity in the global response to AIDS, athenanetwork.org. And we put up huge amounts of information. We advocate for, AIDS prevention, AIDS treatment, and papers, and my papers and other feminist research around these issues, female condoms. You can find all the latest research on microbicides, which prevent the spread of AIDS for women. So I would say athenanetwork.org is a very good place to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. Seth, where can we get the book, man? Talk to us.
Yeah, the book is Denying AIDS, and it was written really to do what you've been doing, which is to raise awareness, particularly about people who are spreading misinformation. And so it's really written for the general public, and I actually went undercover and infiltrated AIDS denialist groups to write it. And I always like to let people know that the funds that are raised from Denying AIDS, the royalties, are all donated to buy antiretroviral drugs in Africa. And so I think it's kind of a fun read. It's available at Amazon.com.
Well, I got my copy. Do you have a website?
Yeah, I have a website that's dedicated to, again, denying AIDS. And so the website is actually denyingaids.blogspot.com.
Thank you very much, Seth. You were great on this show. We appreciate all the information. Ida Susser, thank you as well. I appreciate all of your information, and I hope all of my listeners will reach out to you guys. You guys were great. You made this show excellent. Now, to my in-studio guest, of course, none other than Jesse Hernandez and my man, William Alamo of the St. John's Well Child and Family Center. Where can they find you? Websites, all of that. Really quickly, we got to go.
Our website is stjohnswellchild.org. You can, to prevent, one thing that I do want to hit on is to help our sisters out there to prevent. We have foot soldiers. My foot soldiers are Daniel Rivas from St. John's Well Child and Family Center. He's my HIV coordinator, putting out the word, giving up free condoms. William Alamo, he's in the high schools, Manual Arts High School and Lincoln Heights High School. We're now trying to infiltrate the Compton High Schools, Dominguez High and Compton High Schools. And our mission is to lower and to get educated, educate our communities. Come in, free condoms. We have them at St. John's all day long.
Awesome, awesome. William?
Yes,
really quickly.
Remember that we've been talking about how the virus is more predominantly found in the African American community, but the virus does not discriminate. It can attack anyone, regardless of your gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, race, whatever it is. Come in and get tested. We definitely want to make sure the guys understand how important it is for them to become get involved. If they're in a relationship, don't let the girl or your partner just go on their own. Make sure you guys both go. And, get the information you need. If you're negative, stay negative. If you're positive, make sure you keep protecting yourself.
There you go. I want to thank one of my special guests who was here, had to leave, Phill Wilson. If you missed him, he was great. And also John Rappaport. This was an excellent show. This was a community show, a call to action show. And I like to do this kind of stuff because everything can't be jokes and giggles. Our life is a complex life as a human being. We laugh, we love, we experience all types of things. And we have to really push ourselves to want to do better, to want to be better, to want to be more informed. A relationship is not just a walk in the park. If you got to maintain your car, what makes you think you can't maintain your relationship? You got to have the tools. Just like a mechanic has to have the tools to properly maintain your vehicle, you have to have the tools to properly maintain your life. And you got spiritual tools, you got emotional tools, you got mental tools, and you also have physical tools. You got to understand your behaviors, which behaviors that are in you that are detrimental to your health. You got to know what these are. And if you don't know what these are, you flying blind. That's what this show was about. I'm ZoWilliams, the voice of reason, and I urge you guys to reach out to all of the resources that were provided to you tonight. Follow me on Twitter at ZoWilliams. Go to my relationship roundtable again. June 25th, I'll be in Chicago at the Little Black Pearl Workshop, 1060 East 47th Street, Chicago, Illinois. My first relationship roundtable of the year. Call me, email me, do whatever you got to do. Tweet me at ZoWilliams. Email me, zo@SiriusXM.com. Get at me for this information. I'll be back next week with another banger, because it's what I do. Peace.